Hey guys, Justin here. So over the weekend, GM announced a new partnership with Nikola Motors, and people were pretty excited about it. In fact, people were so excited that they bought enough shares of Nikola stock to send Nikola up over 40% on Tuesday. This also led a lot of people to leave negative comments on my previous videos where I am critical of Nikola, which is honestly fine with me. I don't really care. But since I have covered Nikola stock in the past, I wanted to make a video sharing my thoughts and opinions on this deal with you. And just because I've been critical of Nikola in the past doesn't mean this video will just be me bashing Nikola and GM. That being said, you have probably guessed that I am not as optimistic about this deal as others might be. So in this video, I will first explain the details of the deal in terms of what each side will get. Then I will give some insights into why GM decided to partner with Nikola. And finally, I will share my predictions for where each of these stocks might end up 5 to 10 years down the road. But before we get into the video, please consider subscribing if you are not already subscribed, and make sure to hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you have your own opinion on the GM-Nikola partnership, feel free to leave a comment and let me know what you think. Do you agree with GM's decision to partner with Nikola, or are you skeptical like I am? Let me know below. So let's go ahead and get into the details of the deal. Under this partnership, GM will manufacture the Nikola Badger and will use its Ultium battery platform and its Hydrotec hydrogen fuel cell platform in the Nikola Badger. Also, under the terms of the agreement, GM will become the exclusive supplier of fuel cells globally, excluding Europe, to Nikola for their Class 7 and 8 semi-trucks. Now, this sounds like a really good deal for Nikola and begs the question, what exactly does GM get in return? Well, for starters, GM will receive an 11% ownership stake in Nikola, which is currently worth $2 billion. And that is really basically it. Now, it also mentions in the article I read that GM expects to get roughly $4 billion worth of value out of the deal, but it doesn't specify where that value is coming from and whether or not it includes the $2 billion worth of value that GM is getting from Nikola stock. So this partnership is leading a lot of people to wonder why on earth GM made the deal in the first place, because it seems like on its surface that GM already has everything it needs to make electric vehicles without really needing to involve Nikola at all. But the more I thought about this, the more I realized that GM needs Nikola a lot more than people might realize. And honestly, it is quite possible that GM got a better deal out of this partnership than Nikola actually did. And I know that is hard to believe because GM already has all of the manufacturing capabilities and all of the engineers and all of the technology. But what GM lacks is something that money can't really buy, and that is public perception and brand recognition. The fact of the matter, and this has been proven over the past 5 years or so, is that GM is really bad at selling electric cars. And I know that is a strong criticism to make of GM, but if we just focus on the sales numbers, we can see that GM has not been able to sell very many electric cars. In fact, if we compare the sales of GM's only electric vehicle, the Chevy Bolt, to Tesla's Model 3, which both vehicles came out at around the same time, we can see that the Model 3 has absolutely crushed the Bolt. Total sales of the Bolt since 2017 have only managed to reach 46,000 units, while the Model 3 has managed to sell over 163,000 units, which is 3.5 times more vehicles over the same time frame. And what's even worse for the Bolt is that sales have already plateaued and are starting to drop, whereas Model 3 sales are continuing to rise. So the question remains, why has a giant in the automotive industry who has been around for over 100 years and generated over $100 billion in revenue last year not been able to compete with Tesla? Well, in order to fully answer this question, we have to go back to the year 1990, which is before Tesla even existed and before I was even born. In 1990, GM revealed an electric concept car called the Impact. And the Impact electric car received a very favorable reception, with lots of consumers expressing interest. Now, when politicians in California saw the good that electric cars could do for the environment, they passed a law that required all 7 major car manufacturers to create zero-emissions vehicles in order to continue selling their cars in California. In response to the new laws, GM designed and built the first all-electric car in the US since the 1970s and called it the EV1. And I won't go too much into the history of electric cars in the US, but electric cars have been around for a very long time. In fact, in the year 1900, 38% of all cars in the US were electric. And this was before the Model T, produced by Ford, made gasoline cars cheaper and more accessible, which ultimately killed the electric car all those years ago. But the EV1 was a game changer because unlike electric cars from the 1970s that only had top speeds of around 45 miles per hour, the EV1 had a top speed of 80 miles per hour, meaning you could safely drive it on highways. In addition to higher top speeds, the EV1 had greater range than the previous electric cars of the 70s did, such as the City Car and the L Car. And it even had faster acceleration than a lot of gas-powered cars at the same time. So all around, this was a great car and people really liked them. But unbeknownst to happy customers of the EV1, GM was secretly plotting to kill it. You see, before GM even sold their first EV1, they had counted on the vehicle being a flop. You see, GM's plan was to make an electric vehicle to appease the California lawmakers, and then when the car didn't sell well, their plan was to say, well, we tried our best, but no one bought them, and so we had to scrap the whole project. This would give off the illusion that GM had done everything in their power to make an electric car work, but had ultimately failed so that they could try to get rid of the zero emissions mandates. So in hindsight, it was no surprise that in 2003, GM canceled the EV program despite it only being around for a couple years. But the most surprising part of this story is what GM did next. Despite many EV1 customers expressing the desire to keep their beloved electric cars, GM instead repossessed all of them and destroyed them. Yes, that is right. They went to each person's house, took the cars, and then drove them to the scrapyard where they were crushed. And people were not very happy about this. In fact, here's a picture of police officers protecting a truck full of EV1s that were being taken to the scrapyard to be crushed, because protesters who had formed the Don't Crush campaign had mobilized there to try to stop them. What this story shows us is that car manufacturers like to pretend like they care about electric cars, but the truth is they are still very much opposed to electric cars. And if it wasn't for Tesla's success in the electric car market, I am convinced that GM would not have made the Chevy Bolt and would have made no electric cars up to this point. In fact, most people don't know this, but Tesla was founded the same year that the EV1 program was canceled. And Tesla most likely wouldn't be around if GM hadn't canceled the EV1 program. Now, the reason I told you that story is because it helps us make a whole lot more sense out of the GM-Nikola partnership. The reason that GM killed the EV1 is the same reason that they don't want to make electric cars today, and that is money. Now, there is also another reason, but let's first look at how money affects GM's decision-making process when it comes to manufacturing electric cars. As consumers, we see all cars as basically the same. A car is a big hunk of metal that gets you from point A to point B. But for car manufacturers, the difference between ICE cars and EVs is very big. They have different components and different supply chains. They require new manufacturing facilities, and they require a lot of batteries, which you either need to buy or manufacture yourself. So essentially what I'm saying here is that when it comes to making electric cars, there is no competitive advantage to being really good at making gas cars. I mean, the fact that a Chevy Bolt and a Tesla Model 3 cost basically the same amount is proof that Chevy is no better at making electric cars than Tesla is. And let's be honest, if given the choice between owning a Model 3 or a Chevy Bolt, the Model 3 is clearly the more attractive vehicle. In addition to the very large cost of scaling up electric vehicle production, GM also doesn't want to make electric vehicles because they don't fit very well into their business model. Electric vehicles have very low profit margins, and many dealerships don't want to sell them. The low profit margins can be attributed to the low production numbers, and the dealerships don't want to sell them because electric cars have less maintenance than ICE cars do. And for a company like Tesla, these aren't big problems because Tesla only makes electric vehicles. So instead of having to support both gas cars and battery cars like GM does, which is essentially like running two different companies with their own unique costs, Tesla can focus all of its resources into scaling production of EVs at a faster rate than GM can. And we all know that as production increases, economies of scale will allow prices to fall faster. And we already are seeing this when we compare the Model 3 to the Chevy Bolt. The price of the Model 3 has been consistently falling since 2017, while the Bolt has stayed around the same price. So as Tesla scales its electric car manufacturing capabilities, other car companies that focus on ICE vehicles simply won't be able to compete. And the reason that GM doesn't want to scale electric vehicle production is because it will take away from their existing business for ICE vehicles. GM is an established company that needs to hit specific financial targets each and every quarter, otherwise investors will flee. GM also has a dividend that it has to pay out and high-level executives that benefit when the company is more profitable. So GM cannot really afford to, nor are they incentivized to dump billions of dollars into making electric cars, because it would mean less profit and lowered pay for executives, and it would scare off investors. Also, even if GM wanted to scale their electric vehicle production up, dealerships don't like selling electric cars. And the reason for this is simple. Dealerships make roughly 50% of their money by servicing the cars they sell. And as we all know, one of the big benefits of owning an electric car over a gas car is that there is a lot less maintenance. So for every electric car that dealerships sell, their revenue actually drops. And if dealerships begin selling too many electric cars, then it is possible that they could go out of business. So dealerships are highly incentivized to sell as few electric cars as possible. This is a direct barrier to GM selling electric cars and is the biggest reason that Tesla doesn't want to use dealerships. In fact, Tesla is the only car company in the US that doesn't have to use dealerships to sell their cars. This has allowed Tesla to offer a better customer experience, further cut costs by removing the margin that dealers charge, and that means that they don't need to hold large quantities of inventory since their cars are made as they are ordered. And this is a really big reason, in my opinion, why GM made the deal with Nikola. Nikola does not have any ICE vehicles, which means that they most likely will be allowed to follow in Tesla's footsteps, and they will be able to sell their vehicles directly to consumers instead of using dealerships. And at the end of the day, this should allow Nikola to be able to sell more electric cars than GM would on their own. Now, the third reason that GM needs Nikola is a little more nuanced, but is still very important. And in my opinion, this is where Nikola provides the most value to GM. If we go back to my initial question, which was, what does GM gain from this partnership? This benefit could be worth billions of dollars. And this benefit is brand perception and brand recognition. A lot of us underestimate the power that branding plays in our purchasing decisions, but the fact remains that a business's brand and consumers' perception of that brand is very important, and businesses are very aware of how customers view them. For GM, for example, they know their customers do not view them as an innovation company. If we go back to the story of the EV1, we can see that GM chose to protect their profits over developing electric cars. So part of it is the brand perception, but another big part of it is brand recognition. When you want to buy something online, you would probably immediately think of Amazon. When you want coffee, you might think of going to Starbucks. And if you want a gasoline car, you might think of GM. But for those consumers who want to buy electric cars, many of them will not even realize that GM makes electric cars. So in order to increase their brand recognition, GM would need to spend billions on advertising to increase their brand recognition in the electric vehicle space, which isn't necessarily something they want to do because they already spend billions of dollars a year in advertising their gasoline cars. Also, they lose money on their electric cars right now while they make money on their gasoline cars. So it doesn't really make sense to advertise their electric cars anyways because they're losing money on each electric car they sell. Compare this to Tesla, who spends nothing on advertising, but was still able to be the top EV company globally last year. So as you can see, the only way for GM to survive as a company as we shift to an all-electric future is to basically change everything about their business and completely rebrand, which doesn't make sense because they would be trading a profitable business that sells millions of cars a year for a business that only sold 167,000 last year in the US. So by building the vehicles for Nikola and then buying a stake in Nikola, GM is effectively rebranding without risking destroying its own business model. And also, it will avoid having to spend billions of dollars a year on advertising its new electric vehicles since Nikola is already seen as a Tesla competitor. And Nikola has also gotten a ton of free press, even though Nikola hasn't sold any vehicles yet, but we won't focus on that. So now we get to the fun part of the video. What is my prediction for the future of GM and Nikola stock? Well, unfortunately, while this deal seems like a good deal for both GM and Nikola, there are still a lot of problems I see. The first is that both GM and Nikola like to talk a big game, but have severely underperformed based on their own projections. GM back in 2017 announced their big electric vehicle program and promised they would have 20 new all-electric vehicles that would launch by 2023. Well, it is currently 2020, and so far the only all-electric car that GM has launched is the Chevy Bolt. So something tells me they are not going to hit their goal of 20 new all-electric cars by 2023. On top of that, you also have Nikola, who is constantly promising new vehicles, but honestly seems like they don't have a clue what they are doing. And the fact that GM has to make their Badger pickup trucks for them is not a good sign to me. Now, I know Trevor Milton has been touting it as a big positive for Nikola to partner with GM, but to me it just shows that Nikola is incapable of doing it themselves. Also, the biggest reason why I'm not bullish on GM and Nikola stock after this news is because of Tesla. Tesla is relentless right now, and they know how to execute very effectively. They also have things that car companies like GM and Nikola don't have, like a robust charging network, advanced self-driving software, and giant battery manufacturing facilities, which will one day allow them to sell millions of EVs a year. Also, despite all of the hype surrounding GM's Ultium battery platform and all of its supposed advancements, the Ultium battery is not being used in any electric cars right now, including the Chevy Bolt. And according to GM, they don't even plan on using it in their upcoming 2022 Chevy Bolt EV. So when you listen to interviews of Mary Barra and Trevor Milton, and you hear them say the word validation, basically what they are saying is that there's a chance the Ultium battery platform might not meet their expectations. But even if their claims of 400 miles of range from a 200 kilowatt hour battery pack is true, it still falls short of Tesla's battery packs, which, by the way, are currently being used in their cars on the road right now and have verified ranges of 390 miles on a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is half the size of GM's Ultium battery packs to get roughly the same amount of range. So as you can see, even the technology that GM is giving to Nikola will not allow Nikola to make a product that is capable of competing against Tesla's cars. And as you can see, this is a very complicated issue, and there are people that are going to disagree with me, but at the end of the day, I believe the easiest way to accurately predict a company's future is to look at their past. For GM, their past actions have shown that they do not care about electric cars, and that they are willing to slow down innovation if it protects their bottom line. And honestly, I believe that if Tesla was never founded, that GM would have never made the Chevy Bolt and would to this day still be actively trying to prevent the rise of electric cars. And when it comes to Nikola, they haven't shown me that they know how to execute yet. So no one knows what they are capable of or if they have what it takes to compete against Tesla. So for me, I will continue to invest in Tesla and I will avoid Nikola and GM stock. Now, that being said, if Nikola can use this partnership to create great products and they can compete well against Tesla, then I might be tempted to buy Nikola stock. But right now, no company can compare to Tesla in the electric car space, and they are the ones to beat. And on top of that, everyone is constantly saying, the word Tesla killer, that this company is going to kill Tesla and that company is going to kill Tesla. But no one has even come close to doing what Tesla has done so far when it comes to electric cars. So I am sticking with Tesla, and I'm just kind of ignoring all of the other electric car companies until they actually follow through on what they say they're going to do. So if you found this video interesting or helpful or thought-provoking in any way, make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. Also, make sure to leave a comment below with your thoughts. This is a very complicated subject, and it's fun to think about what the future holds for these companies. And with that, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.